The blood was still wet on her dress when Owen Maddox found her stumbling through the New Mexico desert, her bare feet torn and bleeding, her eyes seeing nothing at all. He had been tracking a Mustang for the better part of 3 days, following its hoofprints across the sandy terrain between Los Lunas and the open country beyond, when he spotted her silhouette wavering in the heat shimmer like a mirage. At first, Owen thought she was exactly that, a trick of the August sun playing games with his tired mind. But then she collapsed forward onto her knees, and he kicked his sorrel mare into a gallop, his heart hammering against his ribs. When he reached her, she was trying to stand again, her hands clawing at the sand, her mouth moving soundlessly. Her calico dress was torn at the shoulder, the fabric stiff with dried blood that was not her own. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves down her back, matted with dust and what looked like ash. "Easy now," Owen said, dismounting quickly and approaching her with his hands raised, the way he would a spooked horse. "Easy. I am not going to hurt you." She did not seem to hear him. Her eyes, a striking shade of gray that reminded him of storm clouds, stared through him at something he could not see. When he touched her shoulder gently, she flinched violently and scrambled backward, a strangled sound escaping her throat. "It is all right," he said softly, crouching down to make himself less threatening. "You are safe now? Can you tell me your name?" Her lips parted, and for a moment he thought she might speak, but then her eyes rolled back and she crumpled sideways into the sand. Owen caught her before her head could strike the ground, and he felt how light she was, how her skin burned with fever despite the chill that made her shiver. He carried her to his horse and lifted her carefully into the saddle before swinging up behind her. She sagged against his chest, unconscious, and he wrapped one arm around her waist to hold her steady as he turned the mare back toward Los Lunas. Whatever had happened to her, she needed help, and she needed it soon. The ride back took 2 hours, and Owen spent every minute of it wondering who she was and what could have put that look of absolute terror in her eyes. He had seen that look before, during the war, in the faces of soldiers who had watched their entire companies get slaughtered. Shell shock, the doctors had called it. The mind's way of protecting itself from horrors too great to process. When he finally rode into Los Lunas, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the adobe buildings in shades of orange and gold. The town was small but growing, a stopping point for wagon trains heading west and cattle drives pushing north. Owen headed straight for Doc Pemberton's office, calling out before he had even dismounted. The doctor, a lean man in his 50s with wire-rimmed spectacles and capable hands, came hurrying out at the sound of Owen's voice. He took one look at the woman in Owen's arms and immediately ushered them inside. "Put her on the table," Doc Pemberton said, clearing away bottles and instruments with swift efficiency. "What happened to her?" "I do not know," Owen admitted, laying her down as gently as he could. "Found her wandering out in the desert, maybe 15 miles northeast of here. She is in shock, would not speak to me. That blood on her dress, it is not hers." The doctor's expression grew grave as he began his examination, checking her pulse, looking into her eyes, carefully inspecting the cuts on her feet. "She is severely dehydrated and running a fever. These wounds are fresh, maybe a day old. But you are right, the blood is not from any injury I can see on her." "So what happened?" Owen asked, though he had a terrible feeling he already knew. Doc Pemberton was silent for a moment, continuing his examination. Then he found something that made him pause. He pulled a small piece of metal from where it had been caught in the woman's hair. It was a button, the kind used on men's shirts, but it was blackened and melted on one side. "Fire," the doctor said quietly. "She was near a fire, a bad one. And if I had to guess from the state she is in, I would say she lost people in it. Maybe everyone she was with." Owen felt his stomach tighten. Wagon trains sometimes camped in that area, resting their oxen and horses before the final push to California or Oregon. If a fire had swept through a camp, if people had died, that would explain the shock, the blood, the vacant look in her eyes. "There was supposed to be a wagon train passing through this week," Owen said slowly, remembering conversations he had overheard at the general store. "The Hartley train, heading for California. About 20 wagons, maybe 70 or 80 people." Doc Pemberton's face went pale. "God help us. If she is from that train, if something happened to all of them, we need to send riders out immediately." "I will go," Owen said without hesitation. Soon as I know, she is going to be all right. The doctor nodded, already moving to prepare a tonic. I will do everything I can for her. But Owen, if what we are thinking is true, if an entire wagon train was attacked or caught fire, you need to prepare yourself for what you might find out there. Owen had seen enough death during the war to know exactly what the doctor meant, but he nodded anyway. I understand. Just take care of her. He stayed while Doc Pemberton worked, watching as the older man cleaned and bandaged her feet, administered water and medicine, covered her with blankets to combat the fever chills. The woman remained unconscious through it all, lost somewhere deep inside her own mind, where the horrors could not reach her. It was nearly dark when Owen finally left the doctor's office. He went straight to the sheriff, a former Texas Ranger named Jacob Winters, who listened to Owen's story with increasing concern. Within an hour, a search party had been organized. 8 men, including Owen and the sheriff, would ride out at first light to investigate. Owen barely slept that night. He kept seeing the woman's face, the emptiness in her gray eyes, the blood on her dress. He wondered who she had been traveling with. Parents, siblings, a husband, children. The not knowing gnawed at him, but worse was the knowing that by morning he would likely have answers, and none of them would be good. The search party left Los Lunas just as dawn was breaking, following the path Owen had taken the day before. He led them northeast, retracing his steps, and they rode in grim silence. Everyone knew what they were likely to find. They smelled it before they saw it, the acrid stench of burned wood, and something worse, something that made even the most hardened cowboys among them turn pale. When they crested the rise and looked down into the shallow valley below, several of the men cursed, and one turned away to be sick. The wagon train was there, or what remained of it. Charred skeletons of wagons lay scattered across the valley floor, like the bones of great beasts. Canvas covers had burned away completely, leaving only the blackened wooden frames. Belongings were strewn everywhere, items that people had carried across half a continent now ruined and abandoned. And there were bodies, so many bodies, some burned beyond recognition, others that had clearly been killed before the fire ever started. Christ almighty, Sheriff Winters breathed, his face like stone. This was not an accident. Owen dismounted and walked slowly into the camp, his throat tight. The sheriff was right. The wagons had been deliberately set ablaze, and from the arrow shafts he could see protruding from several of the bodies, it had been a raid. But something about it felt wrong. The attackers had taken almost nothing. Supplies still lay scattered among the wreckage. Horses and oxen had been released rather than stolen. This had not been about theft. "Count the dead," Sheriff Winters ordered, his voice rough. "See if you can identify anyone, and for God's sake, watch for survivors." They spent the next 3 hours in that valley of death, a task that would haunt Owen for the rest of his life. They counted 53 bodies in total, men, women, and children. Most had died from arrow wounds or blunt force trauma. Several appeared to have been killed while trying to flee. The wagons had been burned afterward, perhaps to cover the evidence or simply to send a message. But there should have been more. Doc Pemberton had said the Hartley train had 70 or 80 people. That meant anywhere from 17 to 27 people were unaccounted for. Either they had escaped, been taken prisoner, or were scattered across the desert like the woman Owen had found. "We need to search the area," Owen said to the sheriff. "There could be others out there, wandering like she was." They spent another 2 hours scouring the desert in widening circles from the burned camp, but they found no one else alive. They did find 3 more bodies, people who had made it a few hundred yards before collapsing from their wounds. One was a woman clutching a baby, both dead. Owen had to walk away when they found them, his hands shaking with rage and grief for people he had never known. By the time they returned to Los Lunas, it was late afternoon, and the entire town had heard what happened. People lined the street as the search party rode in, their faces reflecting horror and sympathy. Doc Pemberton came out to meet them, and Owen dismounted wearily. "How is she?" Owen asked before the doctor could speak. "Awake," Doc Pemberton said, "but she has not said a word yet, just stares at the wall. I tried to ask her name, what happened, but she will not respond. It is like she cannot hear me." Owen nodded slowly. "We found the train, 53 dead that we could count. Looks like it was a raid, but strange. They did not take much of anything, just killed everyone and burned the wagons." The doctor's face sagged with sorrow. "Dear God, that poor girl. She must have seen it all." "Can I see her?" Owen asked. Doc Pemberton hesitated, then nodded. Maybe a different face will help. Lord knows I have not made any progress. Owen followed the doctor inside. The woman was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows, her bandaged feet tucked under a blanket. Someone had cleaned her up and put her in a borrowed nightgown. Her dark hair had been brushed and braided. She looked young, maybe 22 or 23, with delicate features and fair skin marked by sunburn across her nose and cheeks. She was staring at the far wall, her gray eyes as empty as they had been in the desert. "Miss," Owen said softly, removing his hat as he approached. "My name is Owen Maddox. I am the one who found you yesterday. I just want you to know you are safe now. No one is going to hurt you here." She did not react, did not even blink. He pulled up a chair and sat down, keeping some distance so as not to frighten her. "We found the wagon train," he continued, his voice gentle. "We found what happened. I am so sorry. I cannot imagine what you went through, what you saw. But you survived. You made it. And I promise you, we are going to take care of you now." For a long moment, nothing changed. Then, slowly, her eyes shifted to look at him. Really look at him, seeing him for the first time. Her lips parted and a sound came out, barely a whisper. "They are gone," she said, her voice raw and broken. "They are all gone." Owen felt his chest constrict. "I know. I am so sorry." "Mama," she whispered, and tears began to slide down her cheeks. "Papa, my brother Thomas, my sister Sarah, they are all gone." "What is your name?" Owen asked gently. She blinked slowly, as if trying to remember. "Maeve," she said finally. "Maeve Wilson." "Maeve," Owen repeated, committing it to memory. "That is a good name, a strong name. And you were strong too, Maeve Wilson. You survived something that would have broken most people." She shook her head, more tears falling. "I should have died with them. Why did I not die with them?" "Because you were meant to live," Owen said firmly. "I do not know why, but you were meant to survive. And your family, they would want you to live. They would want you to go on." Maeve's face crumpled and she buried it in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Owen looked helplessly at Doc Pemberton, who made a subtle gesture that seemed to say, "Let her cry." So Owen sat there, this stranger's grief filling the small room, and he wished he knew how to take even a fraction of her pain away. When her tears finally subsided, Maeve lowered her hands and looked at him again. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there now, something besides emptiness. Sorrow, yes, but also a flicker of awareness, of presence. "Tell me what happened," Owen said softly. "If you can. It might help." Maeve drew a shaky breath. "We had been traveling for 3 months," she said, her voice distant, as if she was seeing it all again. "From Missouri, the Hartley train. Mr. Hartley had made the journey twice before, so everyone trusted him. We were going to California to start a new life. Papa had bought land near Sacramento, sight unseen. He was so excited." She paused, her hands twisting the blanket. "We camped in that valley 4 nights ago. There was water, grass for the animals. Mr. Hartley said we would rest for 2 days before the next leg. Everyone was in good spirits. Sarah was excited because she had met a boy, Daniel Foster, and they had been walking together every evening." Owen waited patiently as she gathered her thoughts. "It happened just after sunset," Maeve continued. "The attack. They came from all sides, so many of them. There was screaming and gunfire and chaos. Papa grabbed his rifle and told us to hide under the wagon. But then an arrow hit him and he fell. Mama tried to help him, and someone struck her with a club. Thomas tried to fight them off, but there were too many. I saw him go down. I saw Sarah running, and then I lost sight of her in the smoke." Her voice was flat now, almost clinical, as if she was recounting someone else's story. "I crawled under the wagon like Papa had said. I do not know how long I hid there. Hours, maybe. I heard people dying all around me. The screaming was the worst part. And then they started setting the wagons on fire. I knew I had to move or I would burn alive. So I crawled out and ran. I just ran into the dark. I do not remember much after that. Walking, falling, getting up and walking more. The sun came up and I kept walking, and then there was you." Owen felt a lump in his throat. "You did exactly right. Your papa would be proud that you survived. They all would be." Maeve looked at him with hollow eyes. Would they? Or would they think I was a coward for hiding while they died? You were not a coward, Owen said fiercely. You were smart. You stayed alive. That takes courage too. She did not look convinced, but she nodded slightly and looked away. Doc Pemberton stepped forward then, his expression compassionate. You need rest, Miss Wilson, he said gently, and time to heal. You can stay here as long as you need. I do not have any money, Maeve said dully. Everything we had was in the wagon. Do not worry about that now, the doctor said. We will figure something out. Owen stood up, settling his hat back on his head. I will come check on you tomorrow, if that is all right. Maeve looked at him again, and this time he saw a ghost of something in her eyes. Not quite gratitude, but perhaps acknowledgement. Thank you, she whispered, for finding me, for not leaving me out there. I would never have left you, Owen said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Over the next few days, the town of Los Lunas organized a proper burial for the victims of the wagon train massacre. They dug a mass grave on a hillside overlooking the valley and laid the dead to rest with whatever dignity they could provide. A traveling preacher happened to be passing through, and he said words over the graves while most of the town stood in respectful silence. Maeve was not well enough to attend, still recovering from her ordeal, but Owen was there. He stood at the back of the crowd and thought about the woman lying in Doc Pemberton's spare room, the only survivor of a tragedy that had claimed 56 lives. 56. They had found 3 more bodies during the burial detail. After the service, Sheriff Winters gathered a group to discuss what had happened and what should be done about it. The general consensus was that it had been a raid by a renegade Apache band, but something about that explanation did not sit right with Owen. The Apaches he had encountered during his years in New Mexico were fierce fighters, yes, but they were also practical. They raided for horses, weapons, supplies. This attack had been pure slaughter with almost nothing taken. It felt personal, targeted, but toward what end he could not say. We need to send word to the territorial authorities, Sheriff Winters said, and we need to increase patrols around Los Lunas. If there is a hostile group in the area, we need to be prepared. Owen volunteered for patrol duty, partly because he felt it was his responsibility, and partly because it gave him something to do besides worry about Maeve Wilson. He had taken to visiting her every day, bringing small things he thought might comfort her. A book of poetry from the general store, a pretty shawl one of the town women had donated, wildflowers he picked on his rides. At first, Maeve barely acknowledged these gifts. She spent most of her time staring out the window, her face expressionless. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, she began to emerge from her shell. She started reading the poetry book. She thanked him for the flowers. She asked him questions about the town, about his life. Owen told her about his ranch, a modest spread about 5 miles south of town, where he raised horses. He had inherited it from his uncle 3 years ago and had been working hard to build it into something profitable. He told her about growing up in Texas, about fighting in the war, about drifting west afterward looking for a fresh start. Why horses? Maeve asked one afternoon, about a week after he had found her. She was sitting up in a chair now, her feet healing well enough that she could walk short distances. Owen smiled. Because horses are honest. They do not lie or cheat or pretend to be something they are not. If you treat them right, they will be loyal to you for life. I appreciate that. That is a good reason, Maeve said softly. Then, after a pause, what will happen to me? It was the question Owen had been dreading because he did not have a good answer. What do you want to happen? She looked down at her hands. I do not know. I have no family left, no money, no prospects. In the novels I used to read, the orphaned heroine always had some distant relative who would take her in. But I have no one. Mama was an only child, and Papa's brother died in the war. You could stay in Los Lunas, Owen suggested, trying to keep his voice casual. The town could use a school teacher, or the hotel is looking for someone to help run the front desk. You would not be alone. Maeve looked at him, and he saw a flicker of something in her gray eyes. Not quite hope, but maybe the shadow of it. Would people want me here? I am a reminder of something terrible. You are a survivor, Owen corrected, and survivors are always welcome. Besides, people here are good. They will help you. She nodded slowly, and Owen could see her considering it. The truth was he wanted her to stay, though he was not entirely sure why. Yes, he felt protective of her, responsible for her even, since he was the one who had found her. But it was more than that. There was something about Maeve Wilson that drew him in, her quiet strength, the way she was fighting to reclaim herself from the trauma, the glimpses of humor and intelligence he saw when her guard was down. She was like a puzzle he wanted to solve, a story he wanted to read to the end. 2 weeks after the massacre, Doc Pemberton declared Maeve well enough to leave his care. The town women, led by Mrs. Patterson, who ran the boarding house, had pooled together to provide Maeve with clothes, a small amount of money, and a room at the boarding house until she could get on her feet. It was an act of charity that brought tears to Maeve's eyes. "Why are you all being so kind to me?" she asked Mrs. Patterson, a stout woman with iron gray hair and a warm smile. "Because that is what decent people do," Mrs. Patterson said firmly. "You have been through hell, girl, and we are not about to turn our backs on you. Besides, I have a feeling you will pay it forward someday." Owen helped Maeve move her few belongings to the boarding house, which was a neat 2-story building with a wide porch and flower boxes in the windows. Mrs. Patterson gave her a room on the 2nd floor with a view of the mountains in the distance. "It is not much," Maeve said, looking around at the simple furnishings, "but it is more than I have any right to expect." "It is a start," Owen said, "and Mrs. Patterson is right. You will find your way. You are stronger than you think." Maeve turned to look at him, and for the first time since he had found her, she gave him a small, genuine smile. It transformed her face, chasing away some of the shadows. "You have been very kind to me, Owen Maddox. I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me," Owen said, and he meant it. But that smile, that small moment of light in her darkness, felt like payment enough. As summer turned to autumn, Maeve began to rebuild her life in Los Lunas. She took a job helping at the general store, organizing inventory and assisting customers. The work was simple but steady, and it gave her a sense of purpose. She also started teaching reading and writing to some of the town children in the evenings, using the back room of the store as a makeshift classroom. Owen continued to visit her regularly, though he tried not to be too obvious about it. He told himself he was just checking on her, making sure she was settling in all right, but the truth was he looked forward to seeing her. He liked the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her students. He liked her quiet laugh, still tentative but growing stronger. He liked the way she listened when he talked, really listened, as if his words mattered. They fell into an easy friendship, meeting for meals at the hotel restaurant or taking walks around town in the cool evening air. Maeve told him about her life before the wagon train, growing up in Missouri as the daughter of a shopkeeper. She had been educated, unusual for a woman of her station, because her mother had insisted on it. She loved books and music and had dreamed of becoming a teacher even before tragedy had forced her into the profession. Owen found himself sharing things with her that he had never told anyone else, about the nightmares he still had from the war, about the loneliness of running a ranch by himself, about his dream of building something lasting, a legacy he could be proud of. "You will do it," Maeve said one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch watching the sunset. "You are the kind of man who finishes what he starts." "How do you know?" Owen asked, genuinely curious. "Because you found me," Maeve said simply. "You could have ridden past that day, convinced yourself I was a mirage, but you did not. You stopped, you helped, you finished what you started." Owen felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "I am glad I stopped," he said quietly. "I cannot imagine not having met you." Maeve looked at him, and something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken but profound. Owen realized with a start that what he felt for her had grown beyond friendship, beyond responsibility. He was falling in love with Maeve Wilson, this brave, broken woman who was slowly putting herself back together. But he said nothing, not wanting to rush her or burden her with feelings she might not be ready to reciprocate. She had been through so much. She deserved time to heal, to find herself again. He could wait. October brought cooler weather and the first hints of winter in the mountains. Owen threw himself into work at his ranch, preparing for the cold months ahead. He had 15 horses now, a mix of Mustangs he had broken and domestic stock he was training for sale. It was hard work, but satisfying, and it kept him busy enough that he did not spend every waking moment thinking about Maeve. Almost every moment, but not quite. He was working with a particularly stubborn gray gelding one afternoon when he heard hoofbeats approaching. He looked up to see Sheriff Winters riding toward him at a gallop, and Owen's stomach tightened. The sheriff would not be riding that hard unless something was wrong. "Owen," the sheriff called as he reined in his horse. "We have got a problem. There has been another attack." Owen felt his blood run cold. "Where?" "Small farmstead about 10 miles east of here. Family named Cooper. 3 dead, house burned. Same pattern as the wagon train." "Son of a gun," Owen breathed. "When?" "Sometime last night or early this morning. One of the neighbors found them a few hours ago." Sheriff Winters leaned forward in his saddle, his face grim. "I am putting together another search party. I need good men, Owen, men I can trust." "I am in," Owen said without hesitation. "Just let me saddle a fresh horse." They rode out within the hour, 6 men strong. The Cooper farm was a modest spread with a small house, a barn, and a few acres of crops. Or it had been. Now it was a smoking ruin, the house reduced to charred timbers, the barn collapsed in on itself. The bodies of Samuel Cooper, his wife Rebecca, and their 15-year-old son lay in the yard, arrows protruding from their lifeless forms. "This is getting out of hand," one of the deputies said, his voice tight with anger. "We need to do something before more people die." "But what?" another man asked. "We do not even know who is doing this. Could be Apaches, could be a gang of outlaws, could be someone with a grudge. We are chasing shadows." Owen walked slowly around the property, looking for clues. The pattern was the same as the wagon train. Bodies killed with arrows and blunt force, property burned, but little actually stolen. A few chickens were missing, maybe a pig, but the Cooper's plow horse was still in the pasture, untouched. It made no sense. Unless, Owen thought suddenly, the goal was not theft, but terror. Someone wanted people scared. But why? He was about to share this theory with the sheriff when one of the deputies called out from the tree line. "I found tracks! Looks like maybe 6 or 7 horses heading northeast." The search party mounted up and followed the trail. It led through scrubland and rocky terrain, winding toward the foothills. They followed it for 3 hours before losing it in a rocky wash where the ground was too hard to hold prints. "Damn it," Sheriff Winters said, removing his hat and wiping his brow. They knew what they were doing, covering their tracks like that. "We should head back," Owen said, looking at the sun's position. "It will be dark in a few hours, and we do not want to be caught out here if they double back." The sheriff nodded reluctantly, and they turned their horses toward Los Lunas. The ride back was somber, each man lost in his own thoughts. Owen could not shake the feeling that they were missing something, some crucial piece of information that would make everything make sense. When they finally reached town, it was full dark and most of the businesses were closed. Owen headed straight for the boarding house, needing to see for himself that Maeve was safe. He knew it was irrational, knew the attacks were miles away, but the fear gnawed at him anyway. Mrs. Patterson answered his knock with a concerned expression. "Owen, is something wrong?" "Is Maeve here?" he asked, trying to keep the urgency out of his voice. "She is in the parlor, reading. Owen, you look terrible. What happened?" "There was another attack," he said quietly. "The Cooper family." Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, dear Lord. Are they all right?" Owen shook his head, and the older woman understood. She stepped aside to let him in, and he found Maeve sitting in a chair by the lamp, a book open on her lap. She looked up as he entered, and her expression immediately shifted to concern. "Owen, what is wrong?" He must have looked worse than he thought, because she set down her book and rose to meet him. Without thinking, Owen closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. He felt her stiffen in surprise, then gradually relax, her arms coming up to wrap around his waist. "I am sorry," he said into her hair. "I just needed to know you were safe." "I am safe," Maeve said softly. "What happened?" He told her about the Cooper family, about the search party, about his growing fear that these attacks were not random, but part of some larger, darker plan. Maeve listened in silence, her arms still around him, and when he finished she pulled back just enough to look up at his face. "You think they're going to attack Los Lunas?" she said. It was not a question. "I do not know," Owen admitted, "but I am worried. The pattern, the way they are working closer to town with each attack. It feels deliberate." Maeve nodded slowly. "Then, we need to be ready. The town needs to be prepared to defend itself." "We will be," Owen promised. "The sheriff is organizing a town meeting tomorrow. We are going to set up patrols, establish safe houses, make sure everyone knows what to do if an attack comes." "Good," Maeve said. Then, surprising him, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his jaw. "And you need to be careful, Owen Maddox. I have already lost everyone I care about once. I do not want to lose you too." Owen's heart hammered in his chest. "You care about me?" Maeve's cheeks flushed, but she did not look away. "Of course I do. You saved my life. You have been my friend when I needed one most. You have been kind and patient and good to me. How could I not care about you?" "Maeve," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion, "I care about you too. More than I probably should, more than I have any right to. I know you have been through hell. I know you need time, but I need you to know that I am here. For as long as you need me, for as long as you want me, I am here." Tears glistened in Maeve's gray eyes. "I want you here," she whispered. "I want you in my life. I know it has not been very long, and I know I am still healing, but Owen, you make me feel safe. You make me feel like maybe I can build a life again. Like maybe there is still hope for happiness." Owen cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled over. "There is always hope," he said. "And I swear to you, Maeve Wilson, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and make you happy." She smiled through her tears, and then, rising on her toes, she pressed her lips to his in a kiss that was soft and tentative and full of promise. Owen kissed her back gently, not wanting to rush or overwhelm her, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," Maeve admitted, laughing a little. "I have wanted you to do that for weeks," Owen replied, grinning. They stood there for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, and Owen felt something settle in his chest. This was right. This woman. This moment. This feeling. For the first time since the war, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The town meeting the next day was tense and emotional. Sheriff Winters laid out what they knew about the attacks and what they suspected. There was talk of sending for federal marshals, of organizing a militia, of evacuating the town until the threat was dealt with. Opinions flew fast and furious, but eventually a plan was formed. Patrols would be established, rotating teams of armed men who would watch the approaches to town around the clock. Safe houses would be designated, buildings with good sight lines and strong walls where people could take shelter if an attack came. Weapons would be distributed to anyone who could shoot, and those who could not would be taught. Los Lunas was going to be ready. Owen volunteered to lead one of the patrol teams, and Maeve surprised everyone by offering to help organize supplies and coordinate the safe houses. She had a talent for logistics, it turned out, and within a few days she had the entire town organized with military precision. "You are good at this," Owen told her one evening, as they reviewed patrol schedules together. "My father was a quartermaster during the Mexican War," Maeve explained. "He used to tell me stories about supply lines and strategic planning. I suppose some of it stuck." Owen shook his head in admiration. "You never cease to amaze me, you know that?" Maeve smiled. "Good. I would hate to be predictable." The days passed with no further attacks, and slowly the town began to relax. People still maintained the patrols and kept their weapons close, but the initial panic faded into wary alertness. Life went on, as it always did. For Owen and Maeve, those weeks were a time of growing closer. They saw each other every day, either at town meetings or on the walks they took in the evenings. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's quirks and habits and preferences. Owen learned that Maeve liked her coffee strong and her eggs soft, that she hummed when she was concentrating, that she had a sharp wit and a talent for sarcasm when the mood struck her. Maeve learned that Owen was an early riser who liked to watch the sunrise, that he had a soft spot for stray animals, that he could fix almost anything with his hands and a bit of patience. They kissed often, sometimes quickly in stolen moments, sometimes long and deep when they had privacy. But Owen never pushed for more, sensing that Maeve needed to set the pace. She had been through so much, lost so much. He would wait until she was ready, even if it took years. November came, and with it, the first real cold snap of the season. Owen spent a busy week getting his horses settled for winter, making sure the barn was secure and his hay stores were adequate. He was working on repairing a fence line when he heard a rider approaching at speed. He looked up, his hand instinctively going to the rifle he now kept within reach at all times, but he relaxed when he recognized the rider as Billy Tucker, one of the younger deputies. "Owen!" Billy called, reining in his lathered horse. Sheriff wants everyone back in town right now. There has been a development. What kind of development? Owen asked, already moving toward his own horse. A survivor from one of the attacks, Billy said, his eyes wide with excitement and fear. A kid who managed to escape the Cooper farm. He just showed up in town this morning, half dead from exposure. And Owen, what he is saying, it changes everything. They rode hard back to Los Lunas, and Owen went straight to the sheriff's office. Inside, he found Sheriff Winters, Doc Pemberton, and a boy of maybe 12 or 13, wrapped in blankets and sipping hot broth. The kid was thin and pale, with haunted eyes that reminded Owen painfully of Maeve when he had first found her. "Owen, this is James Cooper," the sheriff said. "Samuel Cooper's nephew. He was visiting the farm when the attack happened." "I hid in the root cellar," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Uncle Samuel told me to run and hide when he saw them coming, so I did. I heard everything. The screaming, the gunfire, and then I heard them talking." "Who?" Owen asked, sitting down across from the boy. "Who did you hear?" "White men," James said, and the words fell like stones into the room. They were white men speaking English. Some of them had accents, sounded like they were from back east. And their leader, he kept saying something about cleaning out the territory, making it white men's land only. Owen felt his stomach drop. "Are you sure?" James nodded emphatically. "I am sure. One of them even said they should go after Los Lunas next, that it was too friendly to Mexicans and Indians. But their leader said not yet, that they needed to build up their numbers first." Sheriff Winters swore under his breath. "So we have been looking for Apache raiders when all along it was a group of white outlaws trying to start a race war. Damn it!" "It is worse than that," Doc Pemberton said quietly. "If they are trying to stir up racial tensions, they might have already succeeded. There have been reports from other towns of vigilante groups forming, of attacks on Mexican settlements and Apache camps. People are scared and angry, and they are looking for someone to blame." Owen felt a cold fury building in his chest. 56 people had died on that wagon train. The Cooper family had been murdered. Also, some group of racist outlaws could push their hateful agenda. It was monstrous. "We need to get this information to the territorial authorities," he said, "and we need to warn the neighboring towns. If this gang is as organized as it sounds, Los Lunas is not the only place in danger." "I have already sent riders," Sheriff Winters said, "but it is going to take time for help to arrive. In the meantime, we are on our own. And Owen, there is something else. James says he recognized one of the attackers, a man named Garrett Wright. Used to be a rancher north of here before he got run out for cheating at cards and stealing cattle. Apparently he has been nursing a grudge ever since." The name meant nothing to Owen, but he nodded. "Do we know where to find him?" "Not yet, but we're working on it." Owen left the sheriff's office and went to find Maeve. She was at the general store, helping Mrs. Henderson stock shelves. When she saw his face, she immediately set down what she was holding and came to him. "What happened?" she asked. He told her everything, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to horror to anger. "So the people who killed my family," she said slowly, "they were not even fighting for land or resources or revenge. They just wanted to murder innocent people to prove some sick point about racial superiority." "Yes," Owen said quietly. Maeve's hands clenched into fists. "I want to help catch them. I want to make sure they pay for what they did." "Maeve, do not tell me it is too dangerous or that I should stay out of it," she interrupted fiercely. "Those monsters took everything from me, my parents, my siblings, my entire future. If there is any way I can help bring them to justice, I am going to do it." Owen looked at her, this fierce, determined woman who had survived hell and come out stronger, and he felt his love for her deepen even further. "All right," he said, "then we will do it together." Over the next few days, more information trickled in. The gang called themselves the White Sons, a name that made Owen's skin crawl. They numbered somewhere between 15 and 20 men, all of them outlaws and murderers who had found common cause in their hatred. Garrett Wright was indeed their leader, a charismatic sociopath who had managed to unite a disparate group of criminals under his twisted banner. The territorial marshal finally arrived with a company of soldiers, and a coordinated effort was launched to track down the White Sons. Owen joined the hunt, as did many of the men from Los Lunas. They spent 2 weeks combing the territory, following leads and searching hideouts. but the gang always seemed to be one step ahead. It was Maeve who finally provided the breakthrough. She had been going through records at the general store, trying to track purchases that might indicate where the gang was getting their supplies. She noticed a pattern of large orders for ammunition, rope, and kerosene being sent to an abandoned mining camp in the mountains northeast of Los Lunas. "It has to be them," she told Owen and the marshal, spreading out the records on the table. "Look at the timing. Every order corresponds with an attack, and the amounts are too large for a mining operation that is supposedly abandoned." The marshal, a stern man named Donovan, who had spent 20 years chasing outlaws, studied the papers and nodded slowly. "Good work, Miss Wilson. This is exactly the kind of lead we have been looking for." They planned the raid carefully. 24 men, a mix of soldiers and armed civilians, would approach the mining camp from 3 directions at dawn. The goal was to capture the White Sons alive, if possible, to put them on trial and let justice be served properly. But everyone knew that the gang would likely fight to the death rather than surrender. The night before the raid, Owen went to see Maeve. She was in her room at the boarding house, and when she opened the door, he saw that she had been crying. "I am scared," she admitted, letting him in. "I know you have to go. I know this is important, but I am scared that you will not come back. I cannot lose you, Owen. I cannot." Owen pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I am scared too," he confessed. "But I have to do this, Maeve. Not just for your family or the Cooper family, but for everyone these men might hurt in the future. I have to see this through." "I know," Maeve said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I know. Just promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will come back to me." "I promise," Owen said, tilting her face up to his. "I have too much to live for now. I have you." He kissed her then, pouring all his love and fear and hope into it. Maeve kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his hair, and for a long moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. "I love you," Maeve whispered when they finally broke apart. "I know it is fast. I know we have not known each other very long, but I love you, Owen Maddox." "I love you too," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "I think I have loved you since the moment I found you in that desert, even though I did not realize it then. You are the strongest, bravest, most incredible woman I have ever known, and I thank God every day that I found you." They spent the night together, not making love, but simply holding each other, drawing strength and comfort from their closeness. When dawn came and Owen had to leave, Maeve walked him to the door and kissed him one last time. "Come back to me," she said. "Always," Owen promised. The raid on the mining camp was swift and brutal. The White Sons, caught by surprise, tried to mount a defense, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. 6 of them died in the initial exchange of gunfire. 8 more surrendered when they realized their position was hopeless. But Garrett Wright and 3 of his most loyal followers made a break for it, riding hard toward the Badlands. Owen was part of the group that gave chase. They pursued the fleeing outlaws for hours across rocky terrain that punished both horses and riders. Finally, Wright's horse stumbled in a ravine and threw him. His companions scattered, but Wright, with nowhere left to run, turned and drew his gun. "Drop it," Owen called, his own rifle trained on the outlaw. "It is over, Wright. Your gang is finished." Wright laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think this is over? You think taking us down will change anything? There are dozens more like us out there, hundreds maybe. White men who are tired of sharing their land with savages and mongrels. You have not won anything." "We have won justice for the people you murdered," Owen said coldly, "and you are going to hang for what you did." Wright's face twisted with rage, and his hand moved toward his gun. Owen did not hesitate. His rifle cracked once, and Wright fell backward, a red stain spreading across his chest. The outlaw leader gasped once, twice, and then went still. Owen lowered his rifle, feeling no satisfaction, only a grim sense of completion. It was done. The man who had orchestrated the massacre that killed Maeve's family was dead. It would not bring them back, would not erase her pain, but at least it was justice of a sort. The surviving members of the White Sons were taken back to Santa Fe for trial. Most of them were convicted and sentenced to hang. A few were given prison terms. The territorial newspapers covered the trial extensively, praising the efforts of Marshal Donovan and the brave citizens who had helped bring the gang to justice. Owen's name was mentioned, as was Maeve's, for her crucial role in discovering the gang's hideout. When Owen finally returned to Los Lunas after weeks of testimony and legal proceedings, it was late December and the first snow of the season was falling. He went straight to the boarding house, and Maeve met him at the door. She did not say anything, just threw her arms around his neck and kissed him with such passion that he nearly stumbled backward. "I missed you," she breathed between kisses. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too," Owen said, holding her tight. "But I am home now. I am here, and I am not leaving again." They went inside, out of the cold, and sat together in the parlor while Owen told her everything that had happened. Maeve listened in silence, her hand gripping his, and when he described Wright's death, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for doing that, for making sure he could not hurt anyone else." "You do not have to thank me," Owen said. "I did what needed to be done. I know." Maeve opened her eyes and looked at him. "And now it is over. We can move forward. We can start building the life we talked about." Owen felt his heart swell. "Is that what you want? A life with me?" "It is the only thing I want," Maeve said simply. "These past months, even with all the fear and uncertainty, I have been happier with you than I ever thought possible after the attack. You have given me hope, Owen. You have given me a reason to live again. So, yes, I want a life with you, if you will have me." "If I will have you?" Owen repeated, laughing. "Maeve Wilson, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Of course I will have you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to marry you, if you will say yes." Maeve's eyes widened. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am," Owen said, taking both her hands in his. "I know I do not have a ring yet, and this is not the most romantic proposal, but I love you more than I have ever loved anyone or anything. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to build a life with you, a home, maybe a family if you want that. I want everything with you, Maeve. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Maeve's face, but she was smiling, the brightest, most beautiful smile Owen had ever seen. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Owen Maddox. Nothing would make me happier." He kissed her then, long and deep and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. It had been a long, dark road to get to this moment, filled with tragedy and pain and loss. But they had found each other in the midst of it all, and somehow that made the light at the end of the tunnel shine even brighter. They were married in January of 1875, in a simple ceremony at the Los Lunas church. The entire town turned out to celebrate, bringing food and gifts and good wishes. Doc Pemberton gave Maeve away, since she had no family left to do it, and Mrs. Patterson cried through the entire ceremony. Sheriff Winters served as Owen's best man, and the judge who had presided over the White Sons trial came down from Santa Fe to officiate. Maeve wore a dress that the town women had sewn for her, a beautiful creation of white lace and satin that made her look like an angel. Owen wore his best suit, which he had only worn twice before, and he could not take his eyes off his bride as she walked down the aisle toward him. They exchanged vows in front of God and the community, promising to love and cherish each other through good times and bad, in sickness and in health, for as long as they both should live. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Maeve to thunderous applause and cheering. The reception was held at the hotel, and it lasted well into the night. There was dancing and music and more food than anyone could eat. Owen danced with his new wife, holding her close and marveling at how far they had both come. From that terrible day in the desert to this moment of perfect joy, it felt like a miracle. "Happy?" he asked, spinning her gently across the floor. "Deliriously," Maeve said, her eyes shining. "I never thought I could be this happy again. Thank you for proving me wrong." "Thank you for giving me a chance," Owen replied, "for letting me into your heart even after everything you had been through. I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." "You already deserve me," Maeve said, reaching up to touch his face. "You saved me in more ways than one." "I love you, Owen." "I love you too," he said, and kissed her again, not caring that everyone was watching. They moved into Owen's ranch house after the wedding, and Maeve threw herself into making it a home. She planted a garden, hung curtains, filled the rooms with books and small touches that made the place feel warm and welcoming. Owen taught her to ride, and she proved to be a natural horsewoman, fearless and skilled. They worked together training horses, and Maeve discovered she had a talent for gentling the wild ones, approaching them with patience and understanding that came from her own experience of being broken and remade. The ranch prospered under their joint efforts. Owen's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and they began receiving orders from ranchers and the cavalry, both looking for well-trained mounts. They expanded the operation, building new corrals and hiring a couple of hands to help with the work. Maeve continued teaching in the evenings, though now she held classes at the ranch instead of in town. Children from Los Lunas and the surrounding area would come out twice a week to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. She was a gifted teacher, patient and encouraging, and her students adored her. Life was good, better than Owen had ever dared to hope. He had a wife he loved, work that fulfilled him, and a community that had become like family. The darkness of the past, while never forgotten, no longer held the power it once had. In the spring of 1876, Maeve told him she was pregnant. Owen was overcome with joy and terror in equal measure, thrilled at the prospect of becoming a father, but worried about all the things that could go wrong. Maeve, perhaps drawing on reserves of strength forged in tragedy, remained calm and confident. "We are going to be fine," she assured him, laughing at his nervous hovering. "Women have been having babies since the dawn of time, Owen. I am healthy. Doc Pemberton is skilled, and I have you. What more could I need?" She was right, of course. When their son was born in December of the year, the birth was long but uncomplicated. Owen held his boy for the first time and felt something break open in his chest. A flood of love so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. The baby was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and gray eyes like his mother's. They named him Thomas Wilson Maddox, after Maeve's brother, who had died in the wagon train massacre. It was a way of honoring her lost family while also looking toward the future. Maeve cried when she held her son for the first time. Tears of joy and sorrow mingled together. "I wish they could have met him," she said softly, gazing down at the baby. "Mama and Papa and Thomas and Sarah, they would have loved him so much." "They can see him," Owen said, sitting beside her on the bed and putting his arm around her shoulders. "Wherever they are, they can see him, and they are proud of you, proud of how strong you have been, how you have built a life from the ashes of tragedy. You honor their memory every day by living fully and loving deeply." Maeve leaned against him, and they sat together in the quiet of their bedroom, watching their son sleep. It was a moment of perfect peace, the kind that comes rarely in life and should be savored when it does. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary joys and challenges of family life. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses as much as his parents did. In 1878, Maeve gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, after Maeve's lost sister. Sarah had Owen's dark coloring and stubborn chin, but her mother's gentle spirit. The ranch continued to thrive. They added cattle to their operation, diversifying their income and expanding their land. Owen hired more hands, including a young Mexican man named Diego, who proved to be invaluable with both horses and cattle. The community around Los Lunas grew as well, becoming a proper town with a railroad stop and several new businesses. Maeve remained active in community life, serving on the school board and organizing aid for families in need. She never forgot what it was like to have nothing, to depend on the kindness of strangers, and she made sure that Los Lunas remained a place where people helped each other. Owen and Maeve's marriage only deepened with time. They had their disagreements, of course, moments of tension when the stress of ranch life or child rearing got to be too much. But they always worked through it, remembering what they had survived to get to this point. Their love was not the fragile, fleeting kind. It was the durable sort, forged in hardship and strengthened by commitment. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, they would sit together on the porch and watch the sun set over the New Mexico landscape. Sometimes they talked, sharing their dreams and worries. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, content just to be together. "Do you ever think about that day?" Maeve asked one evening in the summer of 1882. "The day you found me?" "All the time," Owen admitted. "I think about how easily I could have missed you. If I had been tracking that Mustang from a different angle, if I had decided to make camp earlier, if I had convinced myself you were just a mirage, we might never have met." "I think we would have met eventually," Maeve said thoughtfully. "I believe some things are meant to be. We were meant to find each other, Owen. I am sure of it." Owen took her hand. threading his fingers through hers. "Then I am the luckiest man alive, because finding you, loving you, building this life with you, it is the best thing I have ever done." Maeve smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I feel the same way. You took a broken woman wandering lost in the desert and helped her become whole again. You gave me a reason to live when I had none. You gave me hope and love and a family. I could never repay you for that." "You do not need to repay me," Owen said. "You gave me all those things too. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You taught me what it means to truly live." They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and made something beautiful from it. Their children slept safely in the house behind them. Their horses grazed peacefully in the pasture. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. In 1885, Maeve gave birth to their third child, another son they named Owen Jr., but called by the nickname of Junior to avoid confusion. He was a happy, laughing baby who charmed everyone he met. Thomas, now 8, took his role as big brother seriously, helping Maeve care for his younger siblings. Sarah, at 6, was already showing signs of her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. The Maddox family became a fixture in Los Lunas. They were known for their quality horses, their generosity to neighbors in need, and the love that clearly bound them together. People spoke of them with respect and affection, often pointing to their story as proof that even the darkest tragedies could give birth to light. Owen expanded the ranch again, buying adjoining land from a retiring rancher. He built a new barn, larger and more modern than the original, and invested in breeding stock to improve his herd. The work was never-ending, but it was satisfying in a way that nothing else could be. He was building something that would last, a legacy for his children and their children after them. Maeve opened a proper school in Los Lunas in 1887, a dream she had harbored for years. The town provided the building, and she provided the expertise and passion. She hired 2 other teachers to help her, and together they educated the children of Los Lunas and the surrounding ranches. It was hard work, but Maeve loved every minute of it. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Maeve with a trip to Santa Fe. They left the children with Mrs. Patterson, who was now like a grandmother to them, and spent 3 days in the territorial capital. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate in fine restaurants, and attended a concert at the Opera House. It was a glimpse of a life they could have had, cultured and refined, but both of them were eager to get back to their ranch, their children, their simple but fulfilling life. "I do not need fancy things," Maeve said as they rode home. "I have everything I need right here, with you and our family." "I feel the same way," Owen agreed, though it was nice to get away for a few days. "It was," Maeve admitted, smiling, "but there is no place I would rather be than home." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's keen mind. He went away to study agriculture and animal husbandry at a college in Colorado, planning to return and help run the ranch. Sarah became a teacher like her mother, working at the Los Lunas school and proving to be just as gifted an educator. Junior, the baby of the family, showed an early talent for working with horses and spent every free moment in the stables with his father. Owen and Maeve grew older together, their hair turning gray, lines appearing on their faces. But the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. In 1895, 20 years after their wedding, they renewed their vows in a ceremony at the ranch. All 3 of their children were there, along with what felt like the entire town of Los Lunas. It was a celebration not just of their marriage, but of everything they had built together, the family and the community, and the life that had risen from the ashes of tragedy. 20 years, Maeve said during the reception, standing with Owen's arm around her waist. 20 years since you found me in that desert. 20 years of love and laughter and life. I am so grateful for every single day." "So am I," Owen said, kissing her temple. "Here is to 20 more, and 20 after that, and as many as God sees fit to give us." They danced together as the sun set, the same way they had on their wedding day, and everyone watching could see the love that still burned bright between them. It was the kind of love that inspired others, that gave hope to those who had lost it, that proved healing was possible even after the worst kind of hurt. Thomas returned from college and married a local girl named Emily. They settled on a portion of the ranch land that Owen deeded to them and began building their own life. In 1897, they gave Owen and Maeve their first grandchild, a girl they named Margaret after Maeve's mother. Holding her granddaughter for the first time, Maeve wept with joy, feeling as if a circle had been completed. "Mama would have loved her," Maeve said softly to Owen as they looked at the baby together. "She would have loved all of this, the ranch, the children, the grandchildren. She would have been so proud." "She is proud," Owen said with conviction. "They all are. Your family did not die in vain, Maeve. They live on through you, through our children, through the good you have done in this world. Their legacy is love, and that is the greatest legacy anyone could have." As the century turned and a new one began, Owen and Maeve entered their golden years. They were grandparents now, with Thomas and Emily adding 2 more children to the family, and Sarah marrying a local shopkeeper and having children of her own. Junior remained at the ranch, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Owen's body began to show its age. They spent their days together, still working, but at a more leisurely pace. They took long rides across their land, remembering the early days when it had been just the 2 of them against the world. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching their grandchildren play in the yard, marveling at how full their lives had become. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Maeve asked one evening in 1903. "When you found me in the desert?" Owen thought for a moment, then smiled. "I said you were safe, that I was not going to hurt you." "You said easy," Maeve corrected gently. "Like I was a spooked horse that needed calming. And then you said I was safe." "And I meant it," Owen said. "I promised to keep you safe, and I have spent every day since then trying to keep that promise." "You have kept it," Maeve assured him, taking his hand. "You have kept me safe. You have kept our children safe. You have built a place where love can grow and flourish. You have been everything I needed and more than I ever dreamed possible." "We have been good for each other," Owen said. "You saved me as much as I saved you, you know. I was lost before I found you, drifting through life without purpose or passion. You gave me both. You gave me a reason to be better, to do better, to build something meaningful." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting in that desert so many years ago. They were old now, their bodies worn by years of hard work and their faces lined by time, but their hearts were as young and full of love as they had been on their wedding day. The years that followed were peaceful and content. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated marriages and births, weathered the losses that come with age as friends passed on. Through it all, Owen and Maeve remained each other's constant, the anchor that kept them grounded through life's storms. On a warm evening in the spring of 1910, Owen and Maeve sat together on their porch as they had countless times before. They were in their 60s now, still active but feeling the weight of their years. The ranch was thriving under Junior's management. Their children and grandchildren were happy and healthy, and the town of Los Lunas had grown into a prosperous community. "We did all right, did we not?" Owen said, looking out over the land they had built together. "We did better than all right," Maeve replied, leaning against him. "We built something beautiful, something lasting, a family, a home, a legacy of love. What more could anyone ask for?" "Nothing," Owen said, kissing the top of her head. "Nothing at all." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, 2 souls who had found each other in the darkest of times and created a lifetime of light. Their love story had begun with tragedy and survival, but it had become so much more. It had become a testament to the resilience of the human heart, to the healing power of love, to the possibility of joy even after the deepest sorrow. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Maeve thought about that day in the desert, the day Owen Maddox had found her wandering alone in shock, covered in blood and broken by grief. She thought about the long journey from that moment to this one, the healing and the growing and the loving that had filled the years between. And she was grateful, so deeply grateful for every single moment. "I love you," she whispered to Owen, the words as true now as they had been 35 years ago. "I love you too," Owen replied, holding her close, "always and forever." And there on that porch, surrounded by the life they had built together, Owen and Maeve Maddox sat in perfect contentment, knowing that their love had triumphed over tragedy and would endure long after they were gone. It would live on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that bore their name, in the community they had helped build, and in the story of two souls who had found each other when they needed it most, and created something beautiful from the ashes of grief. Their journey had been long and often difficult, but it had led them exactly where they were meant to be, home, together, in love, and at peace.